Hi everybody, Cheri Sicard, aka Cannabis Cheri, here again with phase 3 of our marijuana pie making tutorial. In our last video, I showed you how to roll out your pie crust to make these cute little individual pies using a mason jar lid. Right now we're going to fill and top the pies, and this is where it really gets fun because you can get really creative with this. So I'm going to start simple and then show you some other techniques. None of them are difficult, but they're going to let you make spectacularly beautiful pies that will wow everybody that you give them to. So right now I'm going to start by making an apple pie. I've got this little pie crust that we rolled out in our last video. You can check that out, and you can also find the recipe for the pie crust dough and also our pie fillings on my website, and that's www.cannabischeri.com. Cheri spelled C-H-E-R-I. So I'm going to fill this now with some apple pie filling that I made yesterday, and it's going to take about 3 or 4 tablespoons per pie. You do want to be careful not to overfill it too much because they will bubble over in the oven. But I do like a lot of apples in my apple pie, so I'm going to push my luck a little bit there, and that looks pretty good. So now we're going to top it, and I'm going to start off with just making a plain old topping for this. It'll be a cute little miniature apple pie. So I've rolled out my dough like I showed you in the last video, and I'm going to take this cup that's slightly larger than my lid and cut out the topping for my pie. And I want this crust to be a little smaller than the last one, so I'm going to go pretty close to the line there on this cup to cut out a circle of dough that is going to be the top of our pie. There we go. Okay, now I'll use my knife just to kind of lift that off without getting the plastic wrap, hopefully. There we go, a nice little circle of dough. This dough is very forgiving. If you rolled it out too thin, you can always get a scrap of dough and just patch it in, but this looks pretty good. I'm going to lay it over the top of my pie there. And now we're going to take a little bit of water on my finger and just run it around the edge and pinch it together. That water helps the two doughs stick together. I'm going to use a little more on this side. And that will help these two doughs stick together. We're going to pinch it closed just like this and make a beautiful miniature little pie. Isn't that cute? Now, because we're baking it in a mason jar lid, it's going to be easy to get out of the pie pan because we can just push it up from the bottom. So this recipe is very easy to work with. The dough is very forgiving. I think I want to put a little bit of an edge on this, and I cut that a little small. So all I'm going to do is take a dough scrap and start pressing it into the edge here to build up a little bit of a pie crust around the edge here. So anywhere I don't have enough dough, no big deal. I just pick up some scraps. Nobody will know that you patched it later if you want to do this. Now, I don't have to do this. I could have just put the two doughs together and left it that way. But I'm going to make a little bit of a fluted edge on this pie. So to do that, I'm just going to build up some dough around the edge. I could have actually maybe cut a circle a little bit bigger than I did, and then I wouldn't have to be doing this. But I just want to show you that this dough is very forgiving and easy to work with. It'd be much harder if I was making one giant pie than these little mini pies, but these are just so easy to work with. It's almost like playing with your Easy Bake Oven when you were a kid and the Play-Doh Fun Factory. The one caveat, though, as I said earlier, you want to handle the dough as little as possible because the more you handle it, the tougher the dough will get, which is not something people want with a pie crust. But okay, we've got this little bit of a fluted edge built up here, just like that. And I'm going to take my fingers and ruffle it just by pressing in like that all the way around. And my dough's a little bit thin on top. We can pinch that together, but it's not a big deal because I'm going to cut some vents in it. In a pie like this, a fruit pie, an apple pie, a blueberry pie, you're going to want the steam to be able to escape. And there you have a cute little apple pie. Before I bake it, I might put a little egg wash on it, brush it with a little sugar. You can also freeze it just like this and then bake it fresh anytime you want pie hot out of the oven. How cool is that? Okay, our next pie topping I like to call my polka dotted pie, and I'm using an ordinary empty doob tube that you might have lying around the house. If you don't have a doob tube, maybe a pen cap would work. But all I'm doing is cutting little circles out of my rolled out dough, just like that. You can use all kind of household objects to cut shapes out of your dough if you're creative about it. And I've cut a whole bunch of these, as you can see, and all I have to do to top my pie is kind of dot these little circles on it to make a very cute little polka dotted pie. I've filled a blueberry pie here with that, and that'll just have some nice little polka dotted dough circles on top of it. The other thing you can do with these little circles is I'm going to put a little water around the edge of the pie, is make a very decorative edge with them, and you can do this with 1 or 2 crust pies, just like that. And we're just going to stack these little circles all the way around the edge of the pie to make a very decorative edge. And there we have a cute little pie, polka dotted pie. I'll put a little egg wash on that, bake it, or freeze it for later. There's lots of other decorative pie crusts you can make, but that's best for another day. I think I gave you enough to get you going. I hope you enjoyed this pie tutorial, and eat your weed.